Hi Capsuleers, welcome to the Chronicles of New Eden. I'm Dan Nordico, CEO of Story in Advance, an alliance in Wormhole. I'm also the co-host of the Capsuleers Chronicle. It's a weekly show about Eve's news every Tuesday at 2015 Eastern Time Zone. So last week's episode were about the first part of the history of the Gallente, where we discovered together that they are an empire of controversy. With, on one side, the privileged people who live in the luxury of the core world, but on the other side, it have vice and immoral activity. We left in the last episode right in the middle of the evacuation of the Caldari from Caldari Prime, because of a conflict between the Caldari and the Gallente. I invite you to listen again the first part if you don't remember. Of course, I'm gonna put the link in the description. So, are you ready to dive with me in this episode? And I do this episode because I like it. And for once, I'm not sorry at all. Federal Schisms. Meanwhile, the ultranationalist regime was beginning to show signs of strength. The Gallente were loath to live under martial law, but protests were quickly silenced. Even government officials who object found themselves rapidly removed from their posts. The situation in the military was little better as competent leaders resigned in the face of questionable orders from President Duvalier. One flashpoint came on Intaki Prime where several pro-Caldari movements sprang up across the planet. In an effort to squash the problem, Duvalier ordered the arrest of 5,000 Intaki deemed most threatening to the Federation. This group was composed of everyone from peaceful activists to rebel leaders to perpetrators of violent anti-Gallente crimes. Rather than imprison them and thereby create a locus point for future protests or worse, execute them and turn them into martyrs, Duvalier elected to exile them from the Federation. Caldari Counterstrike. With the capabilities of the Federation Navy eroded by loss of leadership, the Caldari slowly gained an advantage. The young Caldari Navy was able to slowly push the Federation out of orbit and place them on the defensive. Knowing they could not hold out indefinitely, they swiftly set about evacuating the planet. 2 weeks passed as the Gallente mustered their force for a counter-offensive. The Chief Executive Panel realized they could not hold out, no matter how ineffective the Federation's leadership. With heavy hearts, they ordered all forces to retreat and abandon the evacuation attempt. Decorated Caldari Navy Admiral Yakiya Tobil-Toba, however, disobeyed these orders. Taking his loyal fleet of a few dozen ships, he set course directly for Gallente Prime, where he made a stunning guerrilla-style counter-attack. The Federation, unprepared, sustained heavy initial losses. Believing Toba to be in the vanguard of a full offensive, the Federation Navy abandoned its short-term plans and diverted a great deal of resources toward destroying the Admiral. Using his mastery of fleet movement and subterfuge, Tobil-Toba tactically withdrew, then struck where the Federation was at its most vulnerable. For a week he sustained this, keeping the Federation on its heels. while the rest of the Caldari Navy redoubled its evacuation efforts. The Federation knew it was allowing the evacuation of the Caldari Prime to continue unopposed. But with Tavil-Toba in such close proximity to Gallente Prime, they could not risk their previously planned offensive. Gradually, Tavil-Toba's forces were whisked away until only a single carrier remained. Less than a quarter of the cavalry remained on their own board. Knowing he could not buy further time through combat, Tavil-Toba played a final gambit. He ordered his ship directly into Gallente Prime's orbit. The Federation Navy quickly intercepted him, but Tavil-Toba had not come there to fight. Instead, he pointed his ship down at the city of Euremon. As his ship entered the atmosphere, it broke into pieces, killing everyone on board, and one of the largest fragments of the ship slammed into the city with catastrophic force. The resulting explosion killed 2 million people, more or less instantly, with millions more perishing in the coming days from fallout, fire, and other injuries. The sky was blackened for kilometers around as dust and debris filled the atmosphere. The Federation, horrified, ordered all ships to remain in orbit on the defensive. The Caldari had been freed to complete the evacuation of their own world. Fall of the UNAT. The destruction of the Euremon exposed the failing of Federation leadership to the Gallente people. Military desertions, already rampant, became epidemic. Protests erupt every day in the cities, unopposed by law enforcement. Several of the Federation constituent states set their local militia in opposition to the ultra-nationalist government. A standoff ensued which ended when the President Duvalier finally admitted defeat by lifting martial law. Immediately the Senate passed a vote of no confidence in the President, with even formerly ultra-nationalist senators siding against him. Duvalier was forced to step down. Rest and Reconstruction. Several problems faced the new president. Caldari Prime, though depopulated, was still an economic and symbolic importance to the Federation. A few million Gallente still live on the planet, and a number of Caldari had refused to evacuate. The government thus had no choice but to pour money into rebuilding incentives. Secondly, the ultranationalists ordered bombardment of Caldari Prime came to be seen as attempt genocide. Luc Duvalier and much of the UNAT leadership were arrested and put on a trial for war crime. Though they vehemently denied the genocide charges, most of them, including Duvalier himself, were found guilty. Many were placed into prison for life. Duvalier was exiled and died in obscurity. The Caldari continued to be viewed as rebels who threatened the stability of the Federation. But in the chaos of the UNAT's downfall, they had been given time to fortify their position and build up their navy. The war quickly shifted from hot to cold, with the majority of engagements coming in the form of small border skirmishes rather than grand offensives. The Amarr Empire. Not long after, in AD 23,180, the Gallente made first contact with the Amarr. The Federation was shocked to find another civilization of a size and technology level comparable to their own. Even more worried was the revelation that the Amarr practiced the barbaric tradition of slavery. As each side became more aware of the other's capabilities, each realized that a loud conflict would do more harm than good to both of them. As a result, despite being almost diametrically opposed culturally, the two sides negotiated treaties. The first was the Gallente-Amarr Free Trade Agreement, signed in AD 23,210. Despite the name, the treaty was quite restrictive in nature, in order to assuage worries from both sides. Regardless, this served to bring the two to an uneasy peace. The war continued. Meanwhile, the Gallente-Caldari War began to heat up once again. In an attempt to force the Federation to return Caldari Prime to them, the Caldari made attacks on several Federation borders wards. The Federation in turn fought back by making strikes on Caldari colonies and attempting to capture territory. The Caldari slowly gained an advantage thanks to their development of single-man fighters, able to outmaneuver and hold down the much larger Gallente ships. The Gallente were put on the defensive, and for a while it seemed as if the Caldari would be able to push them all the way back to their own system of luminaires. The Gallente development of the combat drone, however, changed the scenario drastically. Originally little more than proximity mines with limited movement capabilities, drones soon advanced to the level where a single drone was nearly a match for a single fighter. Crucially, because they were much cheaper to produce and require no pilots, the drone quickly shone to the tide back in favor of the Gallente. Just as borders were pushed back to their original positions, the Caldari complete their new upgraded fighter class, a slightly larger ship which sacrificed some maneuverability in favor of stronger armaments. While frigates did not prove as dominant as the Gallente had hoped, they did halt the Gallente advance, returning the conflict to a simmering stalemate. Minmatar Assistance. The plight of the Minmatar enslaved by the Amarr had incited the anger of citizens across the Federation. Despite repeated calls for military intervention, however, the Federation government could not risk open confrontation. The Empire's military was roughly equal strength, unburdened by the pressure of a separate war. This did not stop elements within the Federation from covertly supporting the Minmatar rebels. There were even rumors the Federation government itself was arming the rebels. When the Amarr made the strategic error of attempting to invade the Java Empire, the Minmatar rose up in mass rebellion, working alongside the Java. The Federation began to more overtly provide the Minmatar with weapons and advisors. Within a few months, the Minmatar had carved out significant territory from the reeling Amarr. The Federation quickly acknowledged the Minmatar as a sovereign state and sent experts to assist them in forming a new government, with the result that many of the newly minted republic's governmental institutions were modeled after the structures of the Federation, with a prime minister, parliament, and justice department mirroring the president, senate, and supreme court. Iyen-Oursta. Though the war with the Caldari had been at a stalemate for decades, in AD 23,224, the Caldari frigates suddenly became far more dangerous and maneuverable. It was soon revealed that the Juv, despite working closely with the Federation to assist the Minmatar, had provided the Caldari with the hydrostatic capsule, a technology that allowed them to eliminate the necessity for all but a single crew member. Though the technology was experimental and very dangerous, those select few able to use it became unmatched in battle, and these elite units were able to push the Federation back. Finally, both sides began to muster their forces for a massive push. For a variety of reasons, the two sides met in the system of Iyen-Oursta. Confident of victory, both sides brought the majority of their forces to the front. The result was the second largest battle in the history of New Eden, second only to the Battle of Vac at Chios in the Amarr War. The battle raged for nearly an entire day. The Federation Navy took crippling losses, but inflicted similar destruction in return. In the end, the Caldari Navy was forced off the field, allowing the Federation to claim victory despite suffering for greater losses. The war ends. On the back of his vital role in founding Concord, the Gallente entrepreneur and philanthropist Adonis Elabon was swept into the Gallente presidency. Continuing his role as peacekeeper, he immediately ordered the Federation Navy to fall back from the front toward more defensive positions. He also recalled all forces which were occupying Caldari claim space, save for Caldari Prime itself, using them to clear Federation space of all Caldari influences. While the Chief Executive Panel was willing to negotiate elements with the Senate opposed peace. Elabon left office in YC6 and died of an undiagnosed autoimmune disease the next year, leaving behind a legacy as a peacekeeper and humanitarian. His will stipulates his estate will go toward a foundation dedicated to recognizing those who followed his footsteps, the Adenist Foundation. In YC12, Concord decided to test its mandate as a peacekeeper and intervene. By this point, the only battle were rare border skirmishes, with no serious effort made by either side to claim territory or escalate the war. Both sides were brought to the table in the border system of Tiviev. For 6 months they engaged in peace talks, until they finally reached a settlement. The Federation agreed to acknowledge the Caldari state as a sovereign entity, with all its territory claims intact. The sole exception was Caldari Prime, which had been a point of contention in negotiations. Eventually, the CEP voted to cede it to the Federation, viewing ending the war and opening trade with the Gallente to be more beneficial than the return of their own word. This embittered many Caldari patriots, but they lacked the backing to have their way. Did you know that was the Juv who gave the technology of the capsule to the Caldari? So my theory about finding the technology to remove implants in the fulcrum is more credible than I thought. Did you notice how the Juv was with almost everyone but with no one at the same time? In about a month, I will do the series about the Jove, but next week it's gonna be about the political structure of the Gallente. See you next week, Kennings and friends!